Hello, and welcome to the last in this current series of Mee Gindys. And we are out and about a little bit today, finding out, if you're out and round about Easter, what do you see on the seashore? And also,
we'll be taking a look at one of Peel's most notable monuments.
We'll be diving into the archives as per normal. You've got your book of words there, I think, and I've got a little challenge here for you involving earbuds.
I can't help noticing you've brought in a can of Dove Go Fresh antiperspirant.
All will be revealed.
It's not a hint, is it?
No,
Okay.
you smell, well, as good as usual.
Right.
Whatever that is.
From that to seaweed, then.
From that to seaweed. It's not smelly seaweed, but I was just thinking for this last one, I was out and about. You get out more at this time of the year, walking on the beaches, walking around the Isle of Man, and if you go down, who doesn't enjoy a walk on the beach? And what is the one thing you can guarantee, perhaps with oyster catchers and herring gulls, oyster catchers and herring gulls, you will see on the beach? Seaweed. Right, now you might gather from the sound of water and the sound of stones underneath the feet that we were down on a beach over on the west of the island, Niarble, since you're asking, and a bit breezier than we thought it was going to be. It's a good Manx spring evening. You never know what you're going to get. We were hoping it was going to be lovely sunshine and nice sunsets, and instead it's a bit overcast, a bit misty, quite cold, a bit breezy. Other than that, all is good. It's the Isle of Man. Anyway, we've come down to meet up with Lara. We haven't seen her from the Wildlife Trust for some time, and I thought I'd test your knowledge. Not really, but I thought we haven't spoken for a while about seaweeds, and whenever I go out, it's the one thing you can guarantee you'll see on the walk around the Isle of Man. You might not see the seabirds you're after, you might not see puffins unless you're lucky. I will guarantee you'll see seaweed somewhere. But not many people know a great deal about them, I always guess.
No, probably not. It's not something you tend to look and pay much attention to, really, when you're on the beach. You're usually looking for crabs and fish and more exciting things on the shore. Yeah,
so, does it have an important part to play? A lot of the time, like we're standing here, you see it sort of washed up. Sometimes people think, it's a little bit smelly or whatever. I know there's a lot of types. I recognise one or two, and some of them, when you see them in situ, can be very beautiful. Trouble is, when it's washed up on the beach, it sometimes looks a bit of a mess.
It does, yeah. There are several hundreds of species of seaweeds that we see round our coasts. But it's really important, the seaweed that washes up and rots, it provides food for our small invertebrates, which then provide food for our birds, particularly through the winter and things like that. So it's actually really important for our wildlife.
Okay, well, shall we have a little stroll around then and see if you can maybe identify one or two of the different types we get here down at Niarble. There's a whole scutch in front of us of stuff which has dried up, so I know you get some sort of things like the bladderwracks and such like are the ones that seem quite popular.
Yeah, we get a lot of bladderwrack, that tends to be more on your sheltered shores, but down here at Niarble we'll get things like spiral rack, serrated rack, channel rack, hopefully some kelp, some like laminarias, and also a few green seaweeds and a few reds as well, thrown in for good measure.
Well, let's have a little stroll and see what we can see then. I'll follow you because you've got the boots on. See what we can see. You see there's a pun in there.
Yeah, see what we'd see.
See what we can see. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Laura Howe down on the beach in Niarble. We'll be back to her in a moment. Do you know much about seaweeds?
I know I don't like walking on it with bare feet.
Don't like it? Ever eaten any?
No, I haven't.
Tempted?
Not raw, no. I'd probably give it a go if it was, and we know this, don't we, that if you tell me something's good for me, I'll eat it.
I've heard that before. Now, you've got your, we'll swap over, you've got your little magic book.
Yes, so this is the Little Book of Laxey, the little headlines from 1793 to 1899. So I thought I'd let you flick through it today.
Oh, right. Honoured. Right, you ready?
Okay, go on.
Here we go then.
Right, you ready? And stop. Okay, pick one.
Right. Oh gosh, there's a nice little few things on this. Right. Isle of Man Times, January the 16th, 1886. A Rechabite tea festival and concert. My nana was a Rechabite.
Was she?
On a Saturday, a grand festival and concert was held in the warehouse Laxey Beach in connection with the Sons of Mona tent of Rechabites. The members of the juvenile tent assembled at their tent room on New Road around 4 o'clock and marched in procession to the warehouse and partook of tea. Rechabites, of course, being teetotalers. After the juveniles had finished, a fair number of adults then followed suit. It was a wild afternoon. Tea drinking continued until 8 p.m.
Racy.
4 hours of tea drinking. A grand concert was held in the upper room featuring the Excelsior Glee Choir from Douglas, which had been specially engaged for the occasion. We are sorry to say they were not heard to advantage, as the acoustic properties of the warehouse are not good.
Don't you just love... I wish actually we could be as honest as some of these newspaper headlines have been.
We've lost that honesty, haven't we?
have,
There's a little footnote here, by the way.
Go on.
A glee choir, if you didn't know. My nanny again used to speak of glee choirs. A musical group, traditionally all male, which specialises in singing short songs called glees in trios or quartets.
So was that a Glee tea choir?
It was a glee tea choir. I just love the fact that all they did for about 5 hours was drink tea.
Drink tea.
Fantastic.
Oof, the caffeine rush, eh?
Yeah, but no, of course, no booze allowed. Rechabites, strictly the work of the devil, as they say. Seaweed, that's not the work of the devil. It's a wonder to behold all the way around the Isle of Man. We're going to go back now to Nearble, catch up with Laura again as we march towards the sea to start our little foray of some of the seaweed we could find around that neck of the woods. Right, a little walk down to the water's edge. Let's see what we can see down here. Okay.
I hope you can find some kelp. Some of the kelps, the laminarias and stuff, but the tide just isn't far enough out.
Right, so headed right down towards the water's edge. Now the tide is coming in, you can hear the wind, you can hear the sea as well, I dare say. Good old breeze blowing in, so we're trying not to get too wet. We were just going down to take a look to see if we could see a little bit of kelp. It's just beyond our reach at the moment, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's not a particularly big tide, so our kelps, our laminarias and things like that tend to be right at the bottom of the shore at low water, because different species of seaweed can tolerate different amounts of exposure to the air. So we get a zonation up the beach for seaweeds. So the ones that can cope with being dried out for longer periods of time will find higher up the beach. They'll have mechanisms to enable them to do that. And then you have our low shore species that can only tolerate being exposed for short periods of time. So our kelps are those sorts of species that can only be exposed for a short period of time, which is why you find them at the bottom of the shore.
Okie dokie. Now these ones, I'll just step back a bit, because the side's coming in a bit. So these ones here, now these are some of the wracks, these ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're sort of working our way on the lower mid-shore here, and you find in the mid-shore range, sort of in the eulittoral, you get a lot of your wrack species. So the one we're looking at here is our serrated wrack, and the name, very conveniently, is a definition of it. You can see the serrated
edges.
edge. Yeah. So that's really obvious and really clear. We tend to find this at the lower edge towards the low water mark, and it can cope with moderately exposed shores. They don't tend to have air bladders, those bladders, gas bladders, so they can cope with more of an exposed shore. And they're really great for hiding things underneath them as well. The dampness, although the top might have dried out, the underside is nice and wet, so snails like our flat periwinkles and limpets and things can hide underneath them and maintain a sort of a moisture, nice and damp, and including some of our beadlet and enemies there that like the dampness as well.
Yeah, just underneath the weeds there. So this is the serrated wrack here. So it's the one with the quite fern-like leaf, lovely dark. At least when you see it out of the water, it's just a really nice dark greeny brown. You'll sort of catch it as. And the one with the serrated edge. You mentioned some of the ones with air sacs. The one like this with the you see the little balloons on, that's the straight bladder wrack, is it?
The bladder wrack, yeah, but some of the other species also have air bladders, and I'll show you some of those as we go up the beach.
Marvellous. And this little guy here, is this from the same, just stuck on the shock, this tiny little one? Do we know this one?
It's a different. Oh no, yeah, it's just a new growth for the serrated wrack here, yeah. So that'll be the same as the others that we're looking at, yeah.
Terrific. Right, so the masses of this is the one you might will see a lot of right down by the shoreline. One of the more common ones, as Laura says. And again, you can just get down, have a little look, and you can still tell, because indeed it says what it does on the tin. You look at the side of the leaf and it's serrated, hence serrated rack. So, okay, right, let's paddle up a little bit. Whoops, and see where we can go. We're just escaping the tide. It's coming up as fast as my heels, I tell you. I can always take my shoes off if needs be, you know.
Should have brought your wellies, Howard.
I almost put my paddlers on, but I should have done. Alright, so go a bit up. It's amazing how quickly that tide comes in.
A small sort of feather-like green seaweed here.
Ah, yes, I've got this one. So again, it's sort of glued down a little bit. It does look like green, almost sort of like hair stuck. It's matted and wet. Never looks as pretty as it does out of the water as it does when you see pictures underwater, of course. But yeah, it's like a sort of fine green hair almost glued to the substrate and the rock underneath it at the moment.
Very fine filamentous green. So this is Cladophora rupestris. It doesn't have a common name.
Oh, I knew it.
Just looks like green hair, basically. Short green hair. Nice dark olive green.
And that's Cladophorus. What was that one again?
Cladophora rupestris.
Rupestris. Wow. We could do with a common name for that one. You ought to invent one, Laura.
Green hair.
You didn't stretch the imagination too far on that one.
But I like it to reflect what it looks like. It makes it easy. Like serrated racks got serrated edges.
I think you're right. Right, from henceforth on the Isle of Man, this Cladophorus is going to be known as green hair seaweed, because that's what it is, quite frankly. I think it'd be so much more beautiful. I know you go diving quite a bit. I assume when you see this under the water, it's waving around rather attractive.
Yeah, it's very pretty, yeah. It just opens up.
Yeah, gorgeous.
It's all green hair seaweed. There's much more on that, by the way, if you go to the podcast, which I'll be uploading onto the Wild Thing podcast page, talking with Laura about some of the seaweeds you can see around the Isle of Man. Just trying to inspire you when you're out and about, maybe to take a look at the sort of stuff that's under your feet when you're having a walk on the beach, and you'll find pretty much anywhere. Now then, I do have a curious little challenge here for you. So, so here we go. You got your
slightly alarmed.
Okay,
all right.
All right. You got a little glass of water there for you. Right. Okay.
Am I drinking this?
No, don't drink it.
Okay.
Do not drink it.
Right.
And take one of these cotton wool buds.
Do not stick it in your ear.
Don't stick it in your ear. No, very dangerous. Right. So take one of those. So what you do is, so just sort of dip one end in and see what happens when you stick it into the water. Okay. Bugger all. Now then, turn it around, and so the
You're allowed to say that.
What's that?
Are you allowed to say what you just said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's got a bit bigger and full
of
water. Yeah. Okay.
So the dry end.
Yeah.
Yeah, the dry end. Take your antiperspirant. Do you spray your pits?
More of a roll-on.
More a roll-on.
Yeah.
One. Okay. So don't get it in your eye, and so mind the mic, and just give the end of that a bit of a good spray. Twiddle it around, and a little bit of a spray around to get it over the end there. Okay, and whiz it around a little bit. Okay, that should do it.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now then, stick that end you've just done into the water.
Oh, it's bubbling. What's happening here?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Yeah.
How? I'm just going to. I mean, how do you find out something like this, H? Do you just,
well, yeah. I was just messing around
doing
with
your ears
the other day.
You're doing your ears, and at the same time, you just thought.
But it makes me think. Then, bearing in mind, most people spray it into their armpits. Other areas are available.
Oh no! Don't spray it anywhere else.
No, just your armpits. I did actually once spray it onto my nether regions. Not good. Hurts.
What were you trying to achieve? No, don't go on.
No,
Carry on.
We'll leave that there. It's a family show. But if you think your pits do actually get quite moist, as it were, then that's the whole reason you put them there. It just makes me think: how come your pits don't fizz when you spray antiperspirant onto them? Well, I don't get fizzy pits when I put my antiperspirant on, although I'm a bit of a roll-on man as well, if I'm honest. But I mean, I have used that stuff, and I don't remember ever fizzing. And yet, you put it onto there, and you put it in, it bubbles quite vigorously.
Some sort of chemical reactions going on, isn't it?
If you know the answer, because I don't know the answer to that one, it's just I wonder. I have no idea. I do wonder what's going on. Why, if you spray antiperspirant or deodorant onto the end of a cotton wool bud and then dip it into water, it effervesces quite vigorously. If you know the answer, Howard Kane at manxradio.com, Beth Espy at manxradio.com. I bet Adrian Cowan doesn't know the answer to this one.
Well, I wouldn't put it past him, actually.
He knows
to be
ball
fair.
lightning, but
he does.
Yeah, I tell you.
Oof.
Right. You know what? I will. We're talking about eating seaweed. The one thing I did want to try with Laura, was to sort of see if we could have a look at some edible ones, and she did find some.
Now we're coming up to one of them, much brighter. It looks more like a a lichen or a moss sort of seaweed, which is that much brighter green.
Yes, so this is known as gutweed. So it's an ulva species. There's several species, so it's quite difficult to identify them. But if you look at them, it forms these little strings, sort of, and they look a bit gut-like.
They do.
Like your intestines. You can see them sort of floating here in the rock pool, and you can kind of make out all the little strands and the little strings of intestines. So it's known as gutweed, and quite often these are associated with a fresh water output somewhere. So the prime example, the fact that there's the runoff there coming in from here. And this is one of our edible species as well. Actually, a lot of our seaweeds are edible. You can dry them, you can fry them, but you need to get as much moisture out of them as possible, because when you fry them with the water, it spits a lot.
Well, funnily enough, you've read my mind, because I was going to mention before we finished today that I do know quite a few of them are edible, and I was wondering whether you were someone who's sampled a few seaweeds, and I know it's a bit of an acquired taste for some.
Absolutely, yeah. It's fine. I don't think it tastes of a lot. I mean, I've had it fried crisps. Think about, your sushi that you have. That sort of seaweed, that's kind of, it's okay. I don't think there's a lot of flavour to them. You can dry it and make it into a powder and use it for salads, to add to seasoning for stews.
Yeah, I've had that. Someone's given me dried stuff before I've used.
Yeah, and laver bread that the Welsh have. That's seaweed. It's a laver. It's made from a certain seaweed. And you mix it with rolled oats, so it's not actually a bread at all. It's more of a sort of a gloop, and you can put it on toast and things like that, and that's meant to be a real sort of delicacy. I think someone referred to it as Welsh caviar. I'm not quite sure it's the same thing, but yeah, it's a very popular thing in Wales anyway.
Yeah, it's a sort of I suppose in a way you could see it as a sort of not quite a wasted resource, but something that is all around us. And the only stuff I've ever tried is a little bit of some of the dried stuff, and the one which I have seen occasionally, which I only know it as sea lettuce, which is like a little
Yeah, I was looking for that. I haven't seen it here yet, but sea lettuce is similar to the gutweed, and again you can eat that. And the porphyra species are the seaweed you make for laver bread. And it forms these sort of flat, sort of browny purple sheets that sort of up the upper areas of the tide. I was hoping we might have found some today, but there doesn't appear to be any. But you can find it in Douglas on the prom wall there. I've seen it there and other places. But obviously, if you are going to eat seaweed, choose your sites very, very carefully. Certain seaweeds will absorb things that you wouldn't necessarily want to eat, shall we say. So if you are going to pick seaweeds, make sure you choose a really clean site.
Is this safe here?
I'd probably say Nyarble's is pretty good, yeah.
All right.
I think so.
Well, in that case, we could try a little nibble then.
Yeah.
So let's just try a small piece of this. So
You can go first.
thank you. Well, it doesn't look too unappetising. It's green, it's sort of mossy. Doesn't smell of a great deal. Well, got a little bit of sand there, unfortunately, like sort of sandwiches on the beach.
Because sea lettuce is also meant to be quite good for, it's high in protein as well.
You think it's going to taste very salty, and it doesn't.
No, it just doesn't taste it very much.
Not a great deal.
Does it?
It's sort of slightly green. No, not a hugely strong. I'm a bit disappointed. I thought there'd be a stronger flavour to it. There's not actually much there.
Things like pepper dulse and things like that have a stronger flavour. Those sorts of seaweeds, but a lot of the sort of greens are quite, just quite plain and
not
bland.
unpleasant, just a bit bland.
Yeah.
Oh well, there we go. But as you say, do be very careful if you're wanting to have a little nibble of something, unless you know what you're doing. Either ask an expert, or there's some good books around, and just be very careful. Don't be silly if you're going out, and obviously don't wreck any environments either. You just take little bits, like anything. If you're doing a bit of foraging, take a little bit for what you need, and leave plenty for anyone else and for the environment and all the other creatures as well. Don't be greedy, in other words. Right, let's see what else there is.
I bet you like a little nibble from time to time.
Don't be greedy when you're nibbling. No, don't be. No.
Thanks very much to Dr. Laura Howe from Manx Wildlife Trust. And as I say, much more on that on seaweeds you can find around about the Isle of Man on the Wild Thing podcast here on Manx Radio. Speaking of wild things, people like I say, I was thinking Easter weekend, long weekend, plenty of time to get out and about. It looks like the weather might be nice. If you're going up Peel Hill, and I was hearing some of the guys and girls in the newsroom or somewhere here quite recently pondering and wondering about Corrins Tower, a place we have been.
We have indeed, and we can revisit that time now when we were out with Jeff Neen.
For many years it was open, and it's probably a bit dangerous for people to go in. And there are also quite a few engraved stones inside, which the trustees were worried might get damaged. So the door was put on, that deteriorated, and we had a new one put on, and it cost quite a lot of money because the chap who did it had to get a vehicle up there, his own electricity supply, so it cost quite a bit of money. But that's the biggest expense that we've had on the tower.
Jeff, what can you tell us about the man Corrin who this tower is named after?
Well, when we get to the top, you'll see where he lived, the family farm. And the hill behind the farmhouse was part of his land. And it's rather tragic. His wife had a daughter called Christian, who died at the age of about 3, I think, in 1803, I think, off the top of my head. And they buried her at the highest point on their land. And then in 1806, his wife was in childbirth and she died. So he buried her and the unborn child in the same grave, which we'll see the burial area when we get up there. And then he built the tower because he wanted to go up there and sit looking over the graves.
Yeah.
So he spent many nights with an oil lamp. There is a fireplace.
There is a little fire though, yeah. I'm going to say, I remember seeing that.
You'd have some warmth, but no glass in the windows. In fact, there were more windows then. He got into quite a bit of trouble because the fishermen could see the lights and they were misreading the positions. So he wouldn't do anything. So they went to the governor and asked the governor to intervene. And all he did was he bricked up some of the windows.
The ever wonderful Jeff Neen with us. Oh, I don't know, it was a year or two back when we went up there and had a wonderful tour around the tower. And like I said, I know a lot of people still don't know and look at it. And some of the, like I said, guys and girls were saying, what is it about? What's in there? And so I was saying, well, if you listen out, I can tell you a little bit more about that.
Look at that. You're the font of all
knowledge.
Maybe
Maybe not. Well, Mee Gindys is the font of all interesting things and knowledge one way or another. Any thoughts, drop us a line anytime. howardgain@manxradio.com, Beth Espy at manxradio.com. Anything you wonder about, and we can go and find out a little bit more. We'll do our best. We'll finish, as is traditional on this programme, with a little delve into the Manx Radio archives, the wonderful font of all recorded knowledge at the end of the top corridor here, with all sorts of stuff, which is gradually being digitised, but at the moment we can go in and dip in and see what there is. It is a lucky dip. I found a cassette. You ready?
Go on then.
Push the button, as they say.
Do it. Here we go.
Have you got a favourite?
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, it's Geraldine again.
There's a lovely little Japanese imitation Scots whisky. It's called the Seal Jimmy. It's very fascinating. Fascinating.
It's hardly a wine, if you don't mind me being so bold as to remark, Lord Charles.
Yes?
The whisky.
Well, no, but I mean wines. Oh, I've got them all in there. You've got wines, you've got red and white from all over the world, you've got whiskey, you've got gin.
I think it's Lord Charles, isn't it? And Ray Allen? Ray Allen and Lord Charles?
You've got brandy, you've got liqueur.
How amazing.
And you
I'm
tell
fairly
us what
certain
way
it
to
is.
drink.
With Geraldine, you forget how many people and how many stars Geraldine interviewed in her time. Wonderful. Right, that's about it for this series. Thanks ever so much for listening. Go and check the podcast out. We shall see you next time.
We hope we get another series. I wonder.
I wonder. Cheerio.